Have you ever had something on your face but were unaware it was there? Until you walked into perhaps the restroom, looked in the mirror and went, wow, I didn't know that was there. Then you're met with a bunch of different feelings and emotions related to it, and you sure wish somebody had told you it was there long ago. Well, this video is meant to do the same thing. There's something millions of people, in fact, hundreds of millions of people in our country alone are facing that they're not even aware of. I'm going to talk to you now about the biggest obstacle you must overcome in order to choose to start farming now. Come along with us as our family shares our journey as we hope to inspire you and move you toward greater stability and resilience as you also choose to start farming now. I was on a social media site just the other day, and I was reading through some comments as people were talking about all the different things happening with inflation and world wars and food shortages, and it became very apparent to me in reading all of the comments that there's something people are facing that no one's talking to them about. And I got this idea that many people are facing this massive obstacle that's keeping them from moving forward into a resilient lifestyle despite all the things that are happening in the world. What is that one thing? It's grief. Now, when we associate grief to our lives, we typically think of somebody that we really love and care for, a family member, a spouse, a child, a close friend, somebody that we've worked with for years, and when they die, we obviously experience grief. And instantly when we think of grief, that's the first place our mind goes. But the reality is that grief is related to loss. And anytime you and I lose something, even if it's a felt loss, something we've projected that we're going to gain, like a promotion at work, or we're going to have a bigger crop than we thought we did, anytime that there's a loss, we grieve. Well, we could surmise the last couple of years in our nation and around the globe with that word, loss. We've lost routine. We've lost a sense of expectation as to what's next. We've lost a lot of the line as to what is right and what is wrong in our society. We have lost a lot of our freedoms. And in the process of losing these things, we grieve. And so if you're struggling with this idea of what's going on, if you're trying to figure things out and you're sensing yourself having a lot of emotional overwhelm, I want to bring to your attention and bring you to a place where you're aware of what you're facing, and it's grief. Grief has 5 parts. Now, some people call them stages or waves. They don't always follow this specific linear path, but all 5 of these parts of grief are involved. And the 5th one is the most important. First, grief deals with denial. Most often, the first part of grief that people face is a rejection of what's really happening. Sometimes that's just they flippantly blow it off. Sometimes it's like no, I've got to run away. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to hear it. I'm turning this off from the television, or I'm moving on and scrolling past this on my social media platform. Even at the office, if people are talking about it, or the grocery store, you just find yourself getting away and just deflecting that it's even really a problem. You're not even sure why people are talking about it. If you are not willing to look at the realities that we are struggling as an economy with the morality in our nation, with shipping and supply issues and food shortages that are not just here but going to continue to come, if all of the inflation that's just mounting up, if you are struggling with any of these things, you're grieving. One of the things I first started to grieve in the midst of the pandemic was that I couldn't go to the grocery store and get most everything we needed in one place. I ended up going to 3 and sometimes 4 stores a week just to get our average weekly grocery list. Boy, was that a problem. Now, denial for me, no, it's just a little temporary thing. No, it's just going to happen. Boy, oh boy, was I wrong. But denial is definitely one thing that will keep people from moving forward. It's a stage of grief. It's a part of grief. Another part of grief is anger. Anger. Oh, if you find yourself being super frustrated, if you think that one minute everything's fine and the next minute you're about to fly off the handle and you're not really understanding why, that's grief. There's something going on related to a loss in your life, and whether it's a loss of time, a loss of money, a loss of family interaction, maybe it's a loss of something like a trip you were planning, but now inflation has just busted that wide open and you just find yourself angry here and there, super frustrated. It's probably grief. Another part of grief is bargaining. Now, bargaining means, and especially related to when someone dies, we would say, well, if I had just said this, or maybe if this had happened and this treatment would have been in place, maybe this would not have taken place. Maybe your mind and your emotions are trying to find a way to backtrack out of the loss so that you can deal with it emotionally and mentally. Bargaining is happening right now with a lot of people, and it's a stage. Well, if we just get new officials in Congress at this fall term, if we could just get him to open up the pipeline here in America, if we change all the gas prices, if we could just, it's bargaining. Hey, that's grief. You're grieving. Another form of grief, the fourth part, is sadness. Even depression. When we realize the loss is certain and that we're not really going to get back what we thought we had, and now it's really gone. True sadness, even a deep felt depression can set in. It's grief. Now, these 4 parts usually happen not always in this order and not always in the same intensity. Everybody's a little different. And so you may say, oh, I've only had one of those kind of feelings. Okay, it's grief. But some of those others you've probably experienced, and yet at the same time, maybe they don't feel as intense as the other. But they're all meant to help us move to the 5th part of grief. The 5th part is acceptance. Acceptance. You've probably cringed when people over the last 2 years have said, this is the new normal. I have. I don't want any part of much of what is considered the new normal. I don't want food shortages. I don't want supply chain problems. I don't want rising gas problems. I don't want all of the struggle health-wise. I want our government to be honest and truthful. I want a lot of things that aren't seemingly what they used to be. But there's a part that I have to move toward to accept what is, not what was, before I can move forward. I had to deal with a lot of this grief myself before I chose to start farming now. And as we are on this journey, hoping to encourage and inspire millions to start farming, producing their own food source, growing in sustainability and security, to be resilient families and communities, I believe the number one biggest obstacle that will keep people from choosing to start farming now is grief. Now you're aware, and we care. We'll talk about this more, but your awareness that you're grieving is a really big step in the right direction. I hope that you soon will be able to cope and handle and even come to that place of acceptance in your grief, so you can start farming now.